What is going on, guys? This is the Inside the Blue Podcast, episode number 23, and today we're breaking down the New York Rangers as we talk about their offseason and what they should do. But nonetheless, we all know Gerard Gallant, no longer the head coach for the New York Rangers. He got relieved of his duty after the Game 7 loss to the New Jersey Devils. And, I wasn't surprised necessarily that he got fired, but, it's something that just sometimes has to get done. I mean, if Drury does not think he's the guy that's going to take him to the promised land, then he's got to make a move. And, there were even questions in the middle of the season if Gerard Gallant's head coaching job was going to be up in air. He was taking some heat, and the team wasn't in a great spot at first, but then, they started to get things going, and then he kept his job for the playoffs. But, first round exit, and Chris Drury felt that he is not going to be the guy anymore. And, there were some rumors as well that some players didn't overly love Gerard Gallant, and I could understand that, in particularly Artemi Panarin. I feel like he was just frustrated with Gallant, and sometimes, you just got to make a move, and that's what they did. Gallant didn't make too many adjustments in that series, if any, and Lindy Ruff did. So, Lindy Ruff definitely outcoached Gerard Gallant in that series. That pretty much led to the Devils winning that series. I think the Rangers definitely were capable of beating the New Jersey Devils. They had the goaltending, and, it was just, the thing is, the Rangers let the New Jersey Devils get to their game, which is a fast-paced game and very good transition. And once they let that happen, their chances of winning the series, I felt, were up in air. And another thing is some of your top players did not play overly well. Aside from Chris Kreider and Igor Shesterkin, Zibanejad was quiet that entire series. He wasn't able to put one in the back of the net till Game 6. Artemi Panarin was invisible. And, of course, Lafreniere, the former number 1 overall pick, was invisible as well. So, in particular, you have to try and find a coach that can help Lafreniere's development or get Panarin, in the right state of mind in the playoffs, because the playoffs are a whole different story, and you need your top guys to perform. That's why some of the top teams are performing in the playoffs. We look at the Florida Panthers, a Cinderella story. Matthew Tkachuk performing at an elite level. Sergei Bobrovsky, outstanding numbers there. He's got one of the highest save percentages in the playoffs, of all time, I think, in this particular run. The guy is just insane right now. And you have that. You have Igor Shesterkin, one of the best goalies in the league, but you need production out of your top players, and you did not get that whatsoever. 5-on-5 was an issue as well. The Rangers were heavily relied on the power play, and, that was the thing, that some of Chris Kreider's goal was on the power play and maybe a few others. But you got to find ways to, not rely on the power play, because, in particular, if you get a game that you're just not getting power plays, I don't know if the Rangers could win that game. So you got to find a way to, get over that hump, and you got to find a head coach right for the job too. Because, you have some options for sure. The head coaching job, in particular, Chris Naubach, Peter Laviolette, and Jay Leach. I think those are the three guys that the Rangers are most intrigued by, And I think overall it's going to be Peter Laviolette. I think out of those three guys, he is probably the safest to pick out of those three, and I'm not sure if Chris Drury wants to go out of his way and, bring up Chris Naubach or go for a guy from another organization. So I think they're going to leave Chris Naubach in the AHL. Who knows? Maybe 2 years from now, this team, Peter Laviolette's gone 2 years from now, and Chris Naubach's the head coach. We don't know. We've seen in a small sample size, in a weird scenario, of what Chris Naubach did in the NHL. And it was nice. It was nice. You beat the Philadelphia Flyers 9-0. and another game that was high scoring. So that's still a small sample size and a weird type of game. So, I mean, we don't know what we're going to get out of him. So, in reality, I think this is why I think Peter Laviolette is the next head coach. I think, he is a well-known coach. We know that. He's a coach that it's easy to buy into his system, I feel like, and I feel like he's a good communicator, and he's enough to motivate these players to really get on the same page as him quickly. I mean, he's an intense coach. We know what he is, and just the problem that the Rangers run into is that he has not been able to get past the first round since 2017. And also, he tends to get pulled, much like Gerard Gallant, 2-3 years into his coaching tenure with that team. So that's the one question. But you can also argue with Peter Laviolette. He had some injuries in Washington. Ovechkin was injured for a bit. He had a bunch of injuries, and he had to overcome that, and goaltending as well. But Peter Laviolette will not have to worry about goaltending whatsoever, because Igor Shesterkin's your goalie, and you have a lot of talent on the offensive end. So I think, if you mix 2 and 2 together, you can get a very high-powered offense team, what the Rangers need. The Rangers need to keep a good team together, and I think Peter Laviolette is the guy to do that. I mean, you look at Chris Naubach, and you can say there's been a bunch of head coaches that have started their ways at the AHL and worked their way up. So, I mean, you could argue that, and maybe you give him the shot. But I think if they fire Peter Laviolette, like assuming Peter Laviolette gets hired, and 2-3 years they're like, no, this guy's not the guy, and they go to Chris Naubach, I think he'll be here for a long time. Chris Naubach. And I think he's a good coach, Naubach. He did a great job in Hartford this year. They had a really good run in the Calder playoffs. So, I mean, that's good on him. And maybe that increases his chances of potentially getting the NHL job. But I don't think so. I think it's going to be Peter Laviolette. He's just a guy that is a veteran coach. Everybody knows him. And I think he's just a guy that the Rangers should get, in my opinion. I mean, you got to get production out of your top players. That's just the bottom line. I mean, what the Rangers did, and they acquired all that talent. They got Tarasenko, they got Patrick Kane, and they weren't able to get it done. Worried me. I mean, I thought that team was really going to go a long way, along with maybe Boston. Boston had a ton of talent, but they just weren't able to win that final game. And with the Rangers, they just couldn't get it done. And, another thing is what do you exactly do with Patty Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko? Do you have enough money to get him? You also have to re-sign Keandre Miller and, Lafreniere. And, I mean, Lafreniere isn't going to be much. We know that. He hasn't proven himself to get a large contract. And maybe that's for the better. Maybe he needs more time. We've seen other players in the league. It takes them a decent amount for them to get going. And maybe that's the guy that Lafreniere is. Maybe Lafreniere needs a bunch of time and, needs to get his skating up and, just get smarter and just do the right things. Maybe that's what we need out of Lafreniere. Maybe just a few years. And I know fans are, impatient because they see number 1 overall pick and they're like, this guy needs to be the next Sidney Crosby or the next McDavid or this and that and this and that. And sometimes that isn't always the case. Sometimes that, some of these rookies take a while to develop and then, it pays off in the end. You see it in all different types of sports. You see it everywhere. But it's definitely, a question mark of what it is for Lafreniere and what his future is with the team. But I fully expect him to be with the Rangers his entire career, along with Kakko, along with Hedl, and along with some other players. So that's just how I feel about Lafreniere. And for Keandre Miller, his second half was iffy. His first half was great. He posted a career high in points, but second half and even in the playoffs, he was not the same player. I look at last year's playoffs compared to this year's playoffs. Last year's players, he was jumping up in the zone, bodying people, playing like how Keandre Miller should be playing, and it was great to see. He was huffing and puffing. And then things just hit something that I didn't expect. And then Keandre Miller, pucks were flying off his stick and everything, and it was weird. It was weird to see Keandre Miller struggling like this because you needed him to step up in the playoffs, and you didn't get that. Adam Fox was okay in the playoffs, but I mean, just it was a bad playoffs this year, and sometimes that happens. That is just what happens sometimes, and you gotta find a way to make the team better in the offseason. Barclay Goodrow probably won't be with the team next year. Sorry about that, guys. Because he's got a $3.6 million cap hit, and I just don't know if that's sustainable. For a fourth liner getting $3.6 million, it's just, it can't happen. And, there's been rumors that if you were to trade Barclay Goodrow, you'd have to throw in a second round pick or third. But the future with Barclay Goodrow and the New York Rangers is probably not that bright. And probably going to have to trade him to get rid of his contract. But, the Rangers got a lot of work to do, and so does Chris Drury. He's got to find a new head coach, and we really hope that he can find the right one to elevate the Rangers game. But nonetheless, it's been the Inside the Blue podcast. I've been your host, Vin. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys later.